Hey guys, tonight we're plunging into the salty depths of the Mediterranean, where a rusted lump of bronze rewrote history itself. Picture yourself bobbing on a creaky boat, the sun scorching your shoulders as divers below haul up treasures from a 2,000-year-old shipwreck. You're squinting at a weird gear-filled chunk of metal half-eaten by time and sea. This is the Antikythera mechanism, a gadget so wild it feels like aliens dropped it off during a Greek beach party. Spoiler, you probably won't survive the shock of how advanced those toga-wearing ancients were. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I'm curious where you're chilling tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're floating above the island of Antikythera, a speck between Crete and the Peloponnese around 1900. The sea's a glassy mirror, but beneath it lies a Roman shipwreck sunk around 60 BCE. Divers tough as old boots are pulling up statues' coins in this odd barnacle-crusted lump. It's about the size of a shoebox, with gears like some steampunk clock. You're wondering, what's this doing in an ancient wreck? Historians still argue whether it was loot trade goods or a rich guy's toy. Mainstream fact, the wreck was a treasure trove carrying luxury items from the Eastern Mediterranean. Quirky tidbit: one diver swore he saw a bronze arm twitch, though he'd probably been underwater too long. You lean closer, salt stinging your nose as the divers pry the thing apart. It's not just a lump. There are dials, inscriptions, and at least 30 interlocking gears. You're thinking gears. In ancient Greece, yup, this thing predates medieval clocks by over a millennium. It's like finding a laptop in Cleopatra's purse. You're tempted to call it a computer, but that's a stretch. Think of it as the world's first analog calculator. The sponge divers who found it didn't know they'd stumbled on a relic that'd baffle scholars for decades. You're imagining their faces. Did we just break Poseidon's pocket watch? The shipwreck's discovery wasn't just luck. It was a storm that drove those divers to shelter near Antikythera. They were after sponges, not history, but fate had other plans. You're picturing their nets snagging on marble statues, their eyes wide as they hauled up gold and glass. The mechanism, though, stole the show. It sat in a museum for years, ignored while curators fussed over shinier loot. You're chuckling at the irony, humanity's greatest tech find gathering dust like a forgotten toy. Joke one, maybe the Greeks left it there to troll future archaeologists. You're now swimming through the wreck's story, feeling the weight of time. The ship was likely a Roman merchant vessel, stuffed with Greek treasures after Rome's conquests. Was the mechanism headed for a general's villa? A philosopher's study? You're sensing the stakes. Each artifact is a clue to a lost world. The quirky bit lingers. Some say the wreck held a mechanical bird, a proto-robot, though that's probably sailor gossip. You're grinning, imagining a bronze sparrow chirping away. The debate rages, was the mechanism a one-off? Or did the Greeks churn out more? You're hooked, ready to dive deeper into this ancient puzzle. The sea's whispering secrets, and you're not turning back. You're brushing sand off the mechanism, its gears glinting like forbidden knowledge. It's not just a relic. It's a slap in the face to anyone who thinks ancient people were all about spears and sandals. You're wondering how something this complex ended up in a watery grave. Joke 2. Maybe it was the captain's GPS, and he still got lost. You're itching to know more, but the wreck's only the start. The real magic lies in those gears, and you're about to get up close. You're still bobbing above that Mediterranean shipwreck, the Antikythera mechanism clutched in your imaginary hands. The sea's a deep blue, and you're itching to know what else this sunken Roman ship was hauling. The wreck's cargo is like a time capsule spilling secrets about trade wealth, and maybe even the mechanism's purpose. You're picturing crates of wine amphorae stacked like ancient Tupperware, and marble statues staring blankly through the murk. Let's dive into the loot and figure out what this ship was up to before it kissed the seabed. The ship sunk around 60 BCE was a beast, likely a Roman merchant vessel, fat with plunder from Greece's eastern edges. Mainstream fact archaeologists found over 300 artifacts, including bronze statues, glassware, and gold jewelry, suggesting a high roller's shopping spree. You're swimming through the wreck, dodging broken pottery and fish that look way too smug. Each item's a clue: a Syrian glass bowl, a Rhodian wine jug, a coin from Pergamon. This wasn't some budget cruise. It was a floating emporium, probably bound for Rome's elite. You're imagining a senator's wife, draped in silk, eyeing the mechanism like it's the latest must-have gadget. But here's the quirky tidbit. Among the finds were dice maybe for mid-voyage gambling, carved from bone and worn smooth. You're grinning, picturing sailors betting their wages while the mechanism sat ignored in a crate. Joke one? Maybe they rolled dice to decide who'd clean the gears. The cargo's mix-art luxury goods, and this bizarre device sparks debate. Historians still argue whether the mechanism was a rich man's toy, a temple offering, or a working tool for a scholar. Was it headed for a library in Alexandria or a general's trophy case? You're leaning toward the scholar, but the dice make you wonder if it was just a fancy paperweight. You're running your fingers over a cracked amphora, salt water prickling your skin. The ship's route likely hugged the coast, hopping from port to port, Ephesus, Rhodes, maybe Delos. You're smelling olive oil and wine, hearing the crew's shouts as they wrestled the sails. The mechanism, packed in a wooden box, was just one item among hundreds. But why was it on board? You're thinking trade, maybe a Greek craftsman selling his masterpiece to a Roman buyer. Or was it loot snatched during Rome's conquests? The wreck's goods point to a world where Greek culture was currency, even as Rome flexed its muscles. Now, picture the storm that sank this ship. You're clinging to the mast waves, crashing like a bad action movie. The crew's panicking, tossing cargo overboard to lighten the load. Joke two, bet they regretted not saving the wine first. The mechanism, heavy and weird, probably wasn't a priority. It sank forgotten, while the sea claimed the rest. You're marveling at how close we came to losing it forever. If those sponge divers hadn't stumbled on the wreck in 1900, we'd have no clue the Greeks were building gear-driven tech. You're whispering a thank you to that storm, even if it was a jerk. The cargo's variety messes with your head. Statues of gods, jewelry fine enough for a queen, and then this mechanical oddball. You're wondering if the mechanism was a status symbol, like owning a Tesla today. Or was it functional, used to track stars for navigation or rituals? The dice roll back into your mind. Maybe the crew didn't even know what it was. You're chuckling at the thought of a sailor trying to pawn it off in a tavern. Joke 3. Trade you this gear thing for a goat? The debate lingers. Was the mechanism a one-of-a-kind marvel, or just another item in a bustling trade network? You're hooked, ready to zoom in on those gears next. You're still hovering over the Antikythera shipwreck, but now your eyes are locked on the mechanism itself, that barnacle-crusted puzzle of bronze. The sea's murmurs fade as you zoom in, fingers brushing the jagged edges of its gears. This isn't just some ancient trinket. It's a machine with interlocking cogs that look like they belong in a watchmaker's shop, not a 2,000-year-old wreck. You're about to get up close with the Antikythera mechanism's guts, and trust me, it's weirder than a sci-fi prop. Picture the device in its prime before the sea chewed it up. It's a box, maybe 13 inches tall, with a wooden frame and bronze plates. Inside, at least 30 gears, some as small as a dime, others palm-sized mesh together like a mechanical ballet. Mainstream fact: these gears, hand-cut with insane precision, are the earliest known example of complex machinery predating anything similar by centuries. You're turning the device over, feeling the weight of its secrets. Each gear's teeth, carved to exact ratios, hum with purpose. You're half expecting it to tick like a grandfather clock. Here's the quirky tidbit. One gear has a funky non-circular shape, like it was designed by someone who hated symmetry. Scholars call it an eccentric gear, and it's a clue to the mechanism's genius. You're chuckling, imagining a Greek craftsman cursing as he filed it down. Joke one bet he threw his chisel across the room. This odd gear wasn't just for show. It helped mimic the wonky orbits of planets. Historians still argue whether this level of math came from one genius or a whole school of gear-obsessed nerds. You're leaning toward a lone tinkerer, but the debate's wide open. You're cranking a tiny handle long gone now, but archaeologists swear it existed. The gears spin slow and deliberate, like an ancient engine warming up. You're smelling olive oil, probably used to lube the cogs, and hearing the faint scrape of metal. The front plate's got dials covered in Greek letters so tiny you'd need a magnifying glass. These aren't just decorations, they're instructions like a user manual etched in bronze. You're picturing a toga-clad scholar, squinting at them, muttering about constellations. The back has more dials, spiral ones, tracking cycles you can't quite wrap your head around yet. The gear's precision blows your mind. Each tooth was cut by hand. No fancy lathes, just skill and patience. You're thinking of your last DIY project, probably a wobbly shelf, and feeling inadequate. Joke 2. These Greeks could have built IKEA furniture blindfolded. The mechanism's complexity suggests a deep understanding of geometry and astronomy stuff we credit to later eras. You're wondering how they pulled it off without computers or even decent coffee. The quirky eccentric gear keeps nagging at you. It's proof they knew planets didn't move in perfect circles, a fact we thought only Kepler nailed in the 1600s. You're tracing the gear's paths, imagining their dance. Some turn fast, others crawl, mimicking the sky's rhythms. It's not just a machine, it's a model of the cosmos shrunk to fit in your hands. You're grinning at the audacity. Ancient Greeks building a pocket universe. But the debate lingers. Was this a teaching tool, a temple prop, or a rich guy's flex? You're leaning toward education, picturing a philosopher spinning it for wide-eyed students. Joke 3. Pay attention, or you're cleaning the gears. The Rex cargo flashes in your mind, those dice that gold. This device belonged to a world of wealth and brains, and you're dying to know what it did. You're still clutching the Antikythera mechanism, its bronze gears glinting under your imaginary lamplight. The shipwreck's treasures, those dice that gold fade as you focus on what this device actually does. It's not just a pretty box of cogs. It's a machine that tracked the heavens, a cosmic calculator built by Greeks who clearly had too much time and genius on their hands. You're about to unravel its purpose, and it's like peeking into the mind of an ancient stargazer. Picture yourself spinning the mechanism's handle, gears grinding softly. The front dial lights up, not literally, but you're imagining it, showing the positions of the sun, moon, and maybe even planets. Mainstream fact: the Antikythera mechanism was an astronomical calculator designed to predict celestial events like eclipses and planetary movements. You're watching pointers creep across zodiac symbols, each click marking time in a way that feels eerily modern. It's not a clock. It's a model of the cosmos crunching numbers the old-school way. You're smelling the sea on the bronze, feeling the weight of a tool that brought the stars to Earth. Here's the quirky tidbit. One dial might have tracked the Olympic Games' 4-year cycle, like a sports calendar etched in metal. You're grinning, picturing a Greek fanboy checking it to plan his trip to Olympia. Joke one bet, he still forgot his sandals. This mix of starry math and earthly events is wild eclipses on one dial, wrestling matches on another. Historians still argue whether the mechanism was mainly for astronomy or had practical uses like navigation or astrology. You're leaning toward a bit of both, but the Olympic dial makes you wonder if it doubled as a party planner. You're turning the crank again, and the back dials spin spirals within spirals. These track lunar cycles and eclipse patterns using math so precise it hurts your brain. You're picturing a scholar in a dusty workshop, scribbling equations on wax tablets. The mechanism used the Saros cycle, a 18-year pattern for predicting eclipses known to Babylonian astronomers. You're marveling at the Greeks' global knowledge borrowing from Mesopotamia, like it's no big deal. Joke 2, they probably swapped eclipse tips over ancient Zoom. The dial's inscriptions, tiny as ant tracks, spell out star names and months like a cosmic to-do list. Now imagine using this thing. You're on a hillside at dusk, stars pricking the sky, cranking the mechanism to match the heavens. It tells you when the moon will go dark, or when Mars will pull a U-turn. You're feeling like a wizard, but also wondering how they pack so much brain power into bronze. The quirky Olympic dial keeps nagging. Maybe it was a cultural flex, showing off Greek unity. Or maybe it was just for fun, like a nerdy Easter egg. You're chuckling at the thought of a craftsman sneaking it in, hoping his boss wouldn't notice. The debate's still alive. Was this device for priests, navigators, or philosophers? You're picturing a temple, priests using it to time rituals, or a ship's captain dodging storms by starlight. The mechanism's gears, those perfect teeth, call back to the wreck's luxury cargo. Only the elite could afford this. Joke 3. Imagine the price tag probably costs more than a chariot. You're awestruck by its purpose. A machine that didn't just tell time, but tamed the sky. You're ready to meet the brains behind it, the Greeks who turned math into magic. You're still cradling the Antikythera mechanism, its gears whispering secrets of the stars. The dials you just explored, those cosmic trackers, and that quirky Olympic dial, have you wondering who dreamed up this bronze marvel? You're about to step into the world of the Greek geniuses who built it, their minds buzzing with math and ambition. Picture dusty workshops, wax tablets piled high, and the faint clink of chisels shaping history. Let's meet the brains behind the cogs. You're in a bustling Greek city, maybe Rhodes or Alexandria around 100 BCE. The air's thick with olive oil and ambition. Mainstream fact, the mechanism's design points to the Hellenistic period, when Greek scholars like Hipparchus revolutionized astronomy with precise measurements. You're picturing Hipparchus, all beard and intensity, sketching star charts by lamplight. He's not the only one. Other names float around like Archimedes or Posidonius, each a rock star of ancient science. You're walking past their workshops, hearing arguments about orbits and angles. These guys weren't just stargazing. They were building tools to crack the cosmos. Here's the quirky tidbit. Legend says Archimedes built a similar device, a sphere that mimicked the heavens, which Cicero later geeked out over. You're grinning, imagining Archimedes demoing it like a proud dad at a science fair. Joke one bet, he called it his cosmic fidget spinner. This tale's fuzzy, but it hints at a culture obsessed with mechanical models. Historians still argue whether the mechanism came from one mastermind or a school like Rhodes Astronomy Hub. You're leaning toward a team effort, but the idea of a lone genius tinkering in a garret's pretty romantic. You're peering into a workshop now, tools scattered like a modern makerspace. A craftsman's hunched over filing a gear with a focus that'd shame a surgeon. You're smelling hot metal, hearing the scrape of bronze. These weren't just astronomers. They were engineers, blending math with metalwork. The mechanism's inscriptions, in Greek script, mention constellations and cycles tying it to Hipparchus's star catalog. You're picturing him, lecturing apprentices, all pay attention, or you're polishing gears. Joke 2, probably the worst intern gig ever. The genius wasn't just in the math, it was in the vision. You're marveling at how they translated equations into spinning cogs. No computers, no CAD software. The eccentric gear from the wreck flashes back that wonky cog mimicking planetary orbits. Only someone like Hipparchus, who mapped stars with freakish accuracy, could have inspired it. You're wondering if he ever held the mechanism cranking it to check his theories. The quirky Archimedes story lingers. Maybe he kicked off this gear craze, passing the torch to later tinkerers. You're chuckling at the thought of Cicero fangirling over a proto-Antikythera like it was the iPhone of 63 BCE. But who actually built it? The debate's a mess. Some say Rhodes, where Posidonius ran a brainy hotspot. Others point to Syracuse Archimedes turf or Alexandria's mega library. You're picturing a relay race, ideas bouncing across the Mediterranean. The Rex cargo, those Rhodian jugs, that Syrian glass hints at a connected world where tech traveled. Joke 3, maybe they shipped the plans via ancient FedEx. You're awestruck by these minds turning abstract math into a machine you can hold. The mechanism's not just a tool, it's a love letter to the stars, and you're ready to see how it mapped them. You're still in that ancient Greek workshop, the Antikythera mechanism's gears glinting in your hands. The ghosts of Hipparchus and his brainy crew linger, their math-fueled dreams etched into this bronze box. Now, you're about to crank the device and watch it map the stars, turning cosmic chaos into neat dials. Picture yourself under a velvet sky, constellations blazing as this ancient gadget predicts the heavens' dance. Let's dive into how it tracked the cosmos. You're spinning the mechanism's handle, slow and steady, like winding a music box. The front dial clicks, pointers sweeping across zodiac signs, Aries, Taurus, Gemini. Mainstream fact, the device modeled the geocentric universe, plotting the sun, moon, and likely 5 planets with eerie accuracy. You're watching the moon's pointer creep, mimicking its phases, while the sun's tracks its yearly loop. It's not just a star chart. It's a living model crunching celestial math in real time. You're smelling the bronze warm from your grip and hearing the gear's faint hum. Here's the quirky tidbit. One dial might have shown the exeligmos, a 54-year cycle for eclipse predictions, named like it's straight out of a fantasy novel. You're chuckling, picturing a Greek scholar dropping exeligmos at a dinner party to sound cool. Joke 1, bet it was the ancient equivalent of flexing jargon. This cycle's tied to the mechanism's back dial spirals that count lunar months and eclipse risks. Historians still argue whether it was used for navigation rituals or just showing off to rival scholars. You're betting on rituals, but the idea of a captain steering by stars is tempting. You're tilting the device, squinting at the back. Spiral dials spin, tracking the Saros cycle, 18 years of eclipse patterns. You're picturing a priest on a hilltop, cranking it to warn of a looming lunar blackout. The math's mind-boggling. The Greeks knew the moon's orbit wobbles, and they built gears to match. That eccentric gear from the wreck flashes back its odd shape, mimicking planetary quirks. You're marveling at how they nailed this without telescopes, just eyes and brains. Joke 2. Maybe they bribed the stars for answers. Now, imagine the stakes. You're in a temple, the crowd hushed as the mechanism predicts an eclipse. It's not just science, it's power. Kings and priests leaned on these forecasts to calm panicky citizens or flex divine clout. The Olympic dial from earlier pops into your mind, maybe at timed festivals, tying the heavens to earthly life. You're grinning at the thought of Greeks syncing their games to the cosmos like cosmic project managers. The inscriptions, tiny Greek letters, list stars and months guiding your cranks. You're feeling like a time traveler, decoding a manual from 100 BCE. The debate's still burning. Was this for practical use or pure science? You're picturing a philosopher demoing it for students, but also a navigator, checking planetary positions at sea. The wreck's cargo those dice that gold hints at a world where knowledge was wealth. Joke 3 bet the mechanism's user charged extra for eclipse predictions. You're awestruck by its celestial dance gears spinning like a mechanical orrery. It's not just tracking stars, it's capturing the universe's rhythm. And you're ready to explore how they crafted this masterpiece. You're still gripping the Antikythera mechanism, its dials frozen mid-dance with the stars. The cosmic calculations you just witnessed eclipses planets. Even that quirky Olympic dial have you in awe of the Greeks' brainpower. Now, you're zooming in on the craftsmanship, the sheer skill that turned bronze and math into a machine. Picture a cluttered workshop, tools glinting in torchlight, and a craftsman's steady hands shaping history. Let's unravel how they built this ancient marvel. You're running your fingers over the mechanism's gears, each tooth carved with precision that'd make a modern jeweler sweat. Mainstream fact: the device's 30-plus gears were hand-cut from bronze sheets, some as thin as a coin, with tolerances under a millimeter. You're picturing a Greek artisan squinting through dust and sweat filing teeth to mesh perfectly. The gears aren't just functional, they're art polished to catch the light. You're smelling molten metal, hearing the tap of a hammer shaping a dial. This wasn't mass production, it was obsession. Here's the quirky tidbit: some gears show tiny flaws, like the craftsman's hand slipped or he sneezed mid-cut. You're grinning, imagining him muttering curses in ancient Greek. Joke 1 bet he blamed his apprentice for the wonky ones. These imperfections humanize the mechanism, proof it wasn't churned out by some mythical robot. Historians still argue whether it was made in one workshop or pieced together across cities like Rhodes or Alexandria. You're picturing a single master, but the idea of a supply chain for gears is intriguing. You're peering closer, noticing the inscriptions, Greek letters, so small they're barely legible. These aren't just labels. They're a manual etched with star names and cycle lengths. You're imagining the patience it took to scratch them, probably with a stylus sharper than your wit. Joke 2, that guy deserved a medal for not going cross-eyed. The wooden frame, long rotted away, held everything tight like a laptop's chassis. The wreck's sea-eaten state makes it hard to picture, but you're seeing it, whole bronze gleaming gears, oiled with olive juice. That eccentric gear from earlier flashes back its odd shape, was no accident, cut to mimic planetary wobbles. Now think about the tools. No power drills, no CNC machines, just chisels files and raw skill. You're marveling at how they measured angles, without digital protractors, maybe using star sightings or simple compasses. The craftsmanship ties to Hipparchus's era, when math and metalwork merged like peanut butter and jelly. You're picturing a workshop buzzing with apprentices, one grinding bronze, another double-checking ratios. The Rex cargo, those Rhodian jugs, that gold hints at wealth funding this level of craft. You're wondering if the mechanism was a commission, maybe for a rich scholar or a temple. The debate lingers. Was this a solo masterpiece or a team effort? You're leaning toward a master-apprentice duo, but the precision suggests a bigger operation. Those tiny flaws keep you grounded. Genius doesn't mean perfect. Joke 3. Maybe they rushed the last gear to hit a deadline. You're awestruck by the hands that shape this, turning raw bronze into a cosmic machine. It's not just a tool, it's a testament to human grit. And you're ready to ponder why this tech vanished for centuries. You're still holding the Antikythera mechanism, its handcrafted gears smooth under your fingertips, a testament to Greek ingenuity. The workshop's hum chisels curses, and all fades as you wonder how this cosmic calculator, so meticulously built, vanished from history. You're standing in the wreckage of time, not just the shipwreck, pondering why this tech light years ahead of its era got lost for centuries. Picture a world where gears stopped spinning and knowledge slipped through the cracks. Let's chase the mystery of its disappearance. You're in the Hellenistic world, around 100 BCE, where the mechanism's gears were cutting edge. Mainstream, fact after the Hellenistic period complex, mechanical knowledge faded with no comparable devices appearing until medieval clocks in the 1300s. You're imagining the chaos Rome's rise, Greek cities losing clout, libraries burning. The mechanism's sophistication, tied to scholars like Hipparchus, relied on a fragile ecosystem of wealth and learning. You're smelling smoke from distant wars, hearing the clatter of looted workshops. This tech didn't just fade, it was buried under conquest and neglect. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some say the mechanism's know-how survived in secret, whispered among alchemists, or hidden in coded texts. You're grinning, picturing a cloak and dagger club of gear nerds. Joke 1 bet their handshake involved cranking an imaginary handle. This idea's fringe, but it fuels wild theories about lost tech. Historians still argue whether the mechanism was a one-off or part of a broader tradition that died out. You're leaning toward a rare masterpiece, but the lack of other finds makes you wonder if more are rusting in undiscovered wrecks. You're walking through a crumbling city, maybe Alexandria, as Roman boots march in. The schools that birthed the mechanism, Rhodes, Syracuse, lose funding or get sacked. You're picturing scrolls tossed into fire's craftsmen, forced to make swords instead of gears. The mechanism's complexity needed peace patrons and apprentices to thrive. When empires clashed, those vanished. You're thinking of the Rex cargo, those statues, that gold symbols of a world rich enough to fund this device. But wealth shifted, and with it, the will to build cosmic toys. Joke 2, maybe they traded gears for gladiator tickets. Now, consider the knowledge itself. The mechanism's math, those sorrow cycles, that eccentric gear, lived in scholars' heads and fragile papyri. You're imagining a library flood, or a scribe skipping the boring gear chapter. Oral traditions couldn't preserve the fiddly details of gear ratios. You're chuckling at the thought of an apprentice forgetting the exeligmos cycle, like flubbing a password. The quirky alchemist theory lingers, maybe some knowledge hid in esoteric texts, but without workshops, it was useless. You're marveling at how close we came to never knowing this existed, thanks to that lucky shipwreck. The debate's open. Was the tech lost because of war economics, or just bad luck? You're picturing a mix. Rome's muscle, Greek decline, and maybe a few lazy scribes. The Rex dice roll back into your mind. Chance played a role in both its loss and rediscovery. Joke 3. Bet the gods rolled those dice to mess with us. You're awestruck by how fragile genius is one storm or sack away from oblivion. The mechanism's silence for centuries feels like a cosmic prank, and you're ready to see how it shocked the world when it resurfaced. You're still clutching the Antikythera mechanism. Its gears, a silent testament to a genius that vanished like a dream. The Hellenistic world's collapse. Those sacked cities, lost scrolls left this device buried in time, a cosmic secret rusting in the Mediterranean. Now, you're fast-forwarding to 1900, when sponge divers off Antikythera's coast hauled it from the deep. Picture yourself on their creaky boat, salt in the air, as this barnacle-crusted relic shocks the world awake. Let's dive into its rediscovery and the chaos it sparked. You're bobbing on the sea, the island of Antikythera, a jagged shadow. It's spring 1900, and Greek divers, tough as leather, are pulling sponges from the depths. A storm drove them here, and now they've hit the jackpot, a Roman wreck stuffed with treasures. Mainstream fact, the Antikythera shipwreck, discovered in 1900, yielded the mechanism, alongside statues and coins, kicking off modern archaeology's obsession with it. You're watching divers surface hauling up marble gods and gold, but it's the weird bronze lump that steals your breath. You're smelling seaweed, hearing their shouts of confusion. Here's the quirky tidbit. One diver, delirious from too long underwater, swore the mechanism hummed when he grabbed it. You're chuckling, picturing him spooked, thinking he'd nabbed Poseidon's alarm clock. Joke one bet, he swam faster than an Olympic sprinter. This tale's probably nitrogen narcosis talking, but it adds to the mechanism's mythos. Historians still argue whether it was recognized as special right away, or just tossed in with the loot. You're betting it puzzled everyone, a gear-filled oddity among shiny statues. You're on the boat now, squinting at the mechanism. It's a mess, corroded, split into chunks, gears fused by time. The divers don't know they've found the world's oldest computer. They're just happy for the payday. You're imagining their boss, a gruff foreman, scratching his head. "What's this junk?" he grumbles. The wrecks haul those dice that Syrian glass flashes back, proof of a rich cargo. But this device feels alien. You're picturing it crated off to Athens, dumped in a museum basement. Joke 2 probably sat next to a mop for a decade. The rediscovery wasn't instant fame. You're in the National Archaeological Museum, 1902, where the mechanism's ignored until a curator, Valerio Stace, notices gears. You're seeing his double take like spotting a spaceship in a pawn shop. He calls it a mechanism, not a clock, sparking whispers among scholars. The world's still reeling from Darwin and steam engines. An ancient computer doesn't fit. You're grinning at the irony, humanity's greatest tech. Find nearly overlooked because it was too weird. The quirky diver's hum lingers. Maybe he sensed its importance, or maybe he just needed oxygen. The debate's alive. Was the mechanism's value grasped early, or did it take decades? You're leaning toward a slow burn, with scholars bickering over its purpose. The wreck's timing, right when archaeology was getting scientific, saved it from being melted down. Joke 3. Good thing they didn't turn it into a fancy paperweight. You're awestruck by the chance of it all. A storm, a diver, a curious curator. The mechanism's back, shaking history like a snow globe, and you're ready to see how science cracked its secrets. You're standing in the Athens Museum, the Antikythera mechanism's corroded gears glinting under dim lights. Its rediscovery in 1900, those divers, that curator's double take, yanked it from obscurity, but its secrets stayed locked tight. Now, you're fast-forwarding to the 20th century, where science finally cracks this bronze enigma. Picture X-ray machines, humming scholars, squinting at ghostly images as the mechanism's inner workings spill into view. Let's dive into the breakthroughs that decoded this ancient machine. You're in the 1970s. The museum's air thick with dust and excitement. British physicist Derek de Sola Price is hunched over X-ray images of the mechanism his coffee long cold. Mainstream fact X-rays and gamma rays used from the 1950s to 1970s revealed the mechanism's 30-plus gears and inscriptions confirming it as an astronomical calculator. You're peering over Price's shoulder, seeing gears emerge like a skeleton in a medical scan. The images show teeth meshing dials layered like a cosmic onion. You're smelling old paper, hearing the click of a projector as Price maps the cogs. Here's the quirky tidbit. Early X-ray tech was so clunky, researchers had to smuggle the mechanism into a hospital scanner after hours. You're grinning, picturing scholars in lab coats sneaking past nurses like tech thieves. Joke one bet, they bribed the janitor with baklava. This covert op paid off, showing the eccentric gear and spiral dials you've come to know. Historians still argue whether Price's model, a hand-cranked planetarium, was fully accurate or a bit optimistic. You're siding with him, but later scans keep tweaking the story. You're flipping through Price's notes diagrams, sprawling like a mad scientist's dream. He counts gear teeth, decodes ratios, and links them to Babylonian eclipse cycles. The Saros dial from the wreck flashes back its 18-year rhythm, now clear as day. You're marveling at how X-rays turned a rusted lump into a window on Greek math. By the 2000s, advanced CT scans take it further, revealing inscriptions hidden inside corroded layers. You're picturing a 3D model spinning on a computer, gears clicking in virtual glory. Joke 2 looks like the Greeks invented CGI too. Now imagine the stakes. You're at a conference, scholars buzzing as Price unveils his findings. The mechanism's not just a curiosity, it's proof the Greeks had tech we thought was medieval. You're hearing gasps when he shows the Olympic dial tying stars to sports. The Rex dice roll into your mind. Chance brought this relic back, and science gave it a voice. The inscriptions etched in tiny Greek list constellations and cycles like a cosmic cheat sheet. You're wondering how many late nights Price spent decoding them, probably muttering about eccentric gears. The debate's still kicking. Did X-rays miss some gears? Or is the mechanism simpler than we think? You're betting on complexity, given those CT scans. The hospital X-ray caper lingers. Science sometimes needs a bit of rule breaking. Joke 3. Maybe they left a thank you note for the radiology team. You're awestruck by how tech peeled back time, turning a sea-eaten relic into a blueprint of genius. The mechanism's secrets are out, but its origins. That's the next puzzle, and you're ready to question who designed this wonder. You're still in the glow of those X-ray breakthroughs, the Antikythera mechanism's gears laid bare like a cosmic blueprint. The CT scans and Price's late-night scribbles proved it's a star-tracking marvel. But now you're wondering who actually designed this thing. You're stepping back into the Hellenistic world where brainy Greeks turned math into metal. Picture bustling ports, starlit observatories, and a debate that's still got scholars throwing shade. Let's chase the murky origins of this ancient computer. Your wandering roads, circa 100 BCE, the sea breeze sharp with salt. The mechanism's tech, those precise gears that Saros dial, points to a hotbed of Hellenistic science. Mainstream fact scholars like Hipparchus, active around 150 BCE, developed the astronomical math behind the mechanism, possibly inspiring its design. You're picturing him all furrowed brow and star charts calculating lunar orbits in a candlelit room. But was he the mastermind, or just a cog in the machine? You're hearing marketplace chatter, smelling grilled fish, as names like Archimedes or Posidonius float through the debate. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some fringe theorists claim the mechanism's design echoes Babylonian star tables, hinting at a Mesopotamian consultant. You're chuckling, imagining a Babylonian astronomer sailing to Rhodes, lugging clay tablets like an ancient laptop. Joke one bet he billed them for travel expenses. This idea is shaky, but it nods to the Greeks' global knowledge network. Historians still argue whether the mechanism was born in Rhodes, Syracuse, or Alexandria's library. You're rooting for Rhodes, given the wreck's Rhodian jugs, but the jury's out. You're poking around a workshop, tools gleaming in torchlight. The mechanism's inscriptions, those tiny Greek letters, match the dialect of Rhodes or nearby islands. You're picturing a local craftsman, maybe trained by Hipparchus's students, sketching gear ratios on wax. The eccentric gear flashes back its odd shape screams advanced math, the kind Hipparchus pioneered. But Archimedes dead by 212 BCE haunts the debate. His legendary sphere from Cicero's tales sounds like a proto-Antikythera. You're wondering if his ideas lingered, passed down like a family recipe. Joke 2, maybe they called it Archimedes' cosmic casserole. Now consider the stakes. You're in a lecture hall, scholars shouting over who gets credit. Alexandria's library, with its scrolls and stargazers, could have birthed this tech. Or Syracuse Archimedes' turf, where gears were old news. The Rex Cargo Syrian glass pergamon coins hints at a connected Mediterranean ideas, hopping ports like fleas. You're marveling at how one device ties to so many places. The Babylonian angle lingers. Maybe Greek traders nabbed eclipse data from Eastern markets. You're grinning at the thought of a Hellenistic think tank blending Greek geometry with foreign flair. The debate's a tangle. Was it one genius, a school, or a cultural mashup? You're leaning toward a Rhodes-based team. Hipparchus's math trickling down to skilled hands. The Olympic dial pops into your mind. Only a Greek would sneak sports into a star machine. Joke 3 bet they argued over gear ratios like we fight over Wi-Fi passwords. You're awestruck by the mystery, a device with roots stretching across empires. Its origins are fuzzy, but its impact on Greek society. That's the next piece, and you're ready to see how it shaped their world. You're still puzzling over the Antikythera mechanism's origins, those Rhodian workshops, and Hipparchus's star charts fading into the Mediterranean haze. The question of who designed it, genius team or cultural mashup, lingers. But now, you're wondering how this cosmic gadget shaped the world around it. You're stepping into ancient Greek society, where the mechanism wasn't just a tool, but a cultural flex, tying stars to temples, ships, and maybe even egos. Picture bustling agoras, priests chanting, and scholars showing off. Let's explore its impact on the Greeks. You're in a Greek city, maybe Rhodes or Athens, around 100 BCE. The air buzzing with debate and olive oil fumes. Mainstream fact: the mechanism, with its ability to predict eclipses and track celestial cycles, likely influenced Greek religious and civic life, aligning rituals with the cosmos. You're standing in a temple, watching a priest crank the device, its gears clicking as he pinpoints an eclipse. The crowd's hushed, seeing divine order in bronze. You're smelling incense, hearing murmurs of awe. This wasn't just science, it was a bridge to the gods. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some believe the mechanism was used to settle bets on festival dates, like an ancient fantasy league for priests. You're grinning, picturing toga-clad bookies arguing over the Olympic dial. Joke one bet they wagered a goat on the next lunar phase. This idea is speculative, but it fits a society obsessed with timing games, harvests, sacrifices. Historians still argue whether the mechanism was a temple treasure, a scholar's toy, or a navigator's guide. You're leaning toward temples, but its versatility keeps you guessing. You're strolling through the agora now, merchants hawking fish and philosophers hawking ideas. The mechanism's existence suggests a culture where knowledge was power. You're picturing a rich patron showing it off at a symposium, guests gasping as dials spin. The Saros cycle from the wreck flashes back its eclipse predictions could calm a panicky city or boost a priest's clout. You're marveling at how one device wove science into faith, making the heavens feel closer. Joke 2. Probably the only thing keeping priests from oversleeping rituals. Now imagine its broader reach. You're on a ship, the captain checking planetary positions with a similar device, dodging storms by starlight. Or, in a school, students watching gears to learn astronomy. The Rex cargo, those dice that gold, reminds you of a wealthy world that valued such tech. The mechanism likely sparked pride proof the Greeks could tame the cosmos. You're wondering if it inspired art or myths, maybe a poet comparing Zeus to a gear-turning sky. The quirky betting idea lingers. Maybe it settled disputes over sacred calendars keeping the peace. The debate's open. Was the mechanism a niche elite tool or a cultural icon? You're picturing a mix, prized by priests and scholars, envied by rivals. The Olympic dial keeps nagging, tying the stars to civic pride. Joke 3. Imagine the bragging rights when it nailed an eclipse. You're awestruck by its ripple effect, shaping how Greeks saw their place in the universe. It's not just a machine, it's a mirror of their ambition. And you're ready to compare it to today's tech wonders. You're still basking in the Antikythera mechanism's cultural glow. Its gears spinning through Greek temples and agoras tying stars to mortal ambitions. The way it shaped rituals and egos feels like a distant echo. But now, you're pulling it into the present. You're about to hold this ancient gadget up against today's tech, from smartphones to space probes, and see how it stacks up. Picture yourself toggling between a bronze dial and a touchscreen, the past and present in a cosmic face-off. Let's compare this Greek marvel to our modern toys. You're sitting in a coffee shop, the Antikythera mechanism on the table next to your laptop. Mainstream fact. The mechanism, often called the world's first analog computer, shares conceptual DNA with modern computing, using mechanical means to process complex data. You're cranking its handle, watching gears mimic the moon's orbit, then glancing at your phone's astronomy app, doing the same with a tap. Both crunch numbers to model the cosmos, but one's bronze and the other's silicon. You're smelling espresso, hearing the hum of Wi-Fi routers, feeling the weight of 2,000 years. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some tech geeks joke the mechanism's dials were the original user interface, complete with a crank for manual input. You're chuckling, picturing a Greek coder cursing a gear jam like you curse a crashed app. Joke 1 bet they wished for a reboot button. This parallels fun, but deep. Both devices simplify the universe for human brains. Historians still argue whether the mechanism directly influenced later tech or was a dead-end genius. You're leaning toward inspiration, seeing its shadow in medieval astrolabes. You're swiping through your phone now, pulling up a 3D star map. It's slick, but the mechanism's gears hand-cut. No batteries feel more alive. You're thinking of NASA's Voyager probes, tracking planets with digital precision. Yet the Greeks did it with bronze and math. The Saros cycle from the wreck flashes back its eclipse predictions, rivaling modern software for accuracy. You're marveling at how both eras chase the same goal, taming the sky. Joke 2, maybe Elon Musk's next rocket needs a giant crank. Now picture the stakes. You're at a tech conference, devs raving about AI while you're holding this ancient calculator. The mechanism's logic gears as algorithms feels like a proto-CPU processing inputs, cranks into outputs, dial readings. Your laptop's running simulations, but the Greeks ran theirs by hand. The Olympic dial pops into your mind, a nod to human quirks in tech, like your phone's sports alerts. You're wondering if our obsession with gadgets, smartwatches, VR headsets, echoes the Greeks' love for their cosmic toy. The Rex dice linger a reminder that chance shapes tech's survival. The debate's alive. Is the mechanism a true ancestor of computers, or just a cool coincidence? You're picturing a lineage gears to clocks, to Babbage's engines, to your MacBook. The quirky UI joke sticks. Maybe those dials inspired how we design tech today. Joke 3. Imagine Steve Jobs unveiling a bronze eye dial. You're awestruck by the parallel, a Greek device holding its own against our cloud servers. It's not just a relic. It's a challenge to rethink progress, and you're ready to probe its lingering mysteries. You're still straddling past and present, the Antikythera mechanism's bronze gears humming beside your smartphone's sleek glow. Comparing it to modern tech, those proto-algorithms that cosmic UI left you marveling at how a 2,000-year-old device still feels alive. But now, you're diving back into its shadows, chasing the questions that keep scholars up at night. Picture yourself sifting through clues, the Rex treasures scattered around you as the mechanism's mysteries refuse to fully unravel. Let's explore the enduring enigmas of this ancient wonder. You're back in the Athens Museum, the mechanism's fragments under glass, their corrosion hiding as much as they reveal. Mainstream fact: despite decades of study, including X-rays and CT scans, we still don't know the mechanism's full purpose or how many were made. You're staring at its gears, imagining lost pieces swallowed by the sea. Was it a one-of-a-kind masterpiece or one of many? You're smelling old bronze, hearing the faint echo of waves from the wreck. The uncertainty feels like a riddle carved in Greek. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some speculate the mechanism had a voice, maybe a bell or chime to signal key cycles like an ancient Alexa. You're grinning, picturing it dinging to announce an eclipse. Joke one bet it had a snooze button for lazy priests. This idea is pure guesswork, but it sparks wild theories about added features. Historians still argue whether it was primarily for astronomy navigation or rituals. You're leaning toward a multi-tool, but the missing pieces keep the truth just out of reach. You're sifting through the Rex cargo in your mind, those dice, that Rhodian jug, hoping for clues. The mechanism's inscriptions, tiny and half erased, mention stars and cycles, but gaps leave scholars guessing. You're picturing a lost manual, maybe sunk or burned, that explained it all. The eccentric gear flashes back its odd shape, a solved puzzle, yet others remain locked. Was it used on ships and temples, or both? You're wondering if another wreck hides a twin device, gears ticking under sand. Joke 2. Maybe it's waiting to photobomb another diver. Now imagine the stakes. You're at a symposium, scholars debating if the mechanism was a rich man's toy or a working tool. The Olympic dial nags at you. Why include sports unless it served a broader crowd? You're thinking of its cultural weight, priests and philosophers wielding it like a cosmic badge. The Babylonian link from earlier lingers. Did foreign ideas shape it, or was it purely Greek? You're marveling at how one relic spawns so many questions, each a thread to a lost world. The Rex dice roll again, a nod to the chance that both hid and revealed this treasure. The debate's a maze. Was it unique, or did a gear-making tradition die out? You're betting on rarity, given no other finds, but the Hellenistic world's vastness keeps you unsure. The quirky bell idea sticks. Maybe it was a showpiece dazzling crowds with sound and motion. Joke 3. Imagine it jamming mid-performance like a Greek tech demo fail. You're awestruck by the mystery, a device that answers some questions only to whisper new ones. It's not just a machine. It's a taunt from history, and you're ready to reflect on its timeless legacy. You're still lost in the Antikythera mechanism's mysteries, It's unanswered questions. Those lost gears, that phantom bell swirling like sea mist. The Rex dice. The Rhodian jugs and the Olympic dial keep tugging at you, fragments of a world that built this cosmic marvel. Now, you're stepping back to see it whole, not just as a machine, but as a timeless beacon of human ingenuity. Picture yourself on a starry hilltop, the mechanism in hand, its legacy stretching across centuries. Let's stand in awe of what it means for history and for you. You're cradling the device, its bronze cool under starlight. Mainstream fact: the Antikythera mechanism, dated to around 100 BCE, is the earliest known complex geared device reshaping our view of ancient technology. You're turning it over, gears, catching the moon's glow, and realizing it's more than a tool. It's proof the Greeks saw the universe as a puzzle they could solve. You're smelling night air, hearing crickets, feeling the weight of a relic that humbled modern science. It's not just old, it's a challenge to every assumption about progress. Here's the quirky tidbit. Some dreamers say the mechanism inspired sci-fi, like the clockwork cosmos in steampunk novels. You're chuckling, picturing a toga-clad Jules Verne spinning gears for fun. Joke one bet he'd have written 20,000 leagues under the gears. This notion's fanciful, but it captures the mechanism's grip on our imagination. Historians still argue whether its legacy directly shaped later tech like medieval clocks, or just whispered inspiration across time. You're leaning toward a quiet influence, a spark that never fully died. You're gazing at the stars, now the same ones the Greeks tracked. The mechanism's dial's zodiac Saros, that eccentric gear tied mortals to the heavens, a quest we still chase with telescopes and apps. You're thinking of the Rex divers, unaware they'd unearthed a game changer. Its rediscovery in 1900. Those X-ray breakthroughs showed us our ancestors weren't so different, tinkering and dreaming like we do. You're grinning at the thought of a Greek craftsman high-fiving a NASA engineer across millennia. Joke 2, they'd probably bond over bad coffee and math. The mechanism's legacy isn't just tech, it's human. You're picturing the hands that cut its gears, the minds that mapped its cycles. They didn't have our tools, but they had grit, curiosity, and a knack for beauty. The Olympic dial flashes back a nod to their love for life's rhythms, from stars to stadiums. You're wondering if we've lost that balance, chasing speed over wonder. The debate lingers: is the mechanism a peak of ancient thought, or a hint of greater lost inventions? You're betting on a peak. But the sea might hide more surprises. You're setting the mechanism down its gears still. It's a reminder that genius is fragile war storms, or just time can bury it. Yet it also proves we endure, digging up truths to light the way. Joke 3. Maybe it's history's way of saying, keep looking, you nerds. You're awestruck by its timelessness. A bronze whisper that says, we're all stargazers then and now. As you step away, the mechanism's legacy burns bright, urging you to dream as big as those Greeks did. The night deepens, stars softening overhead. You're easing back the mechanism's weight, fading like a sigh. Its gears, once spun by ancient hands, rest now, their story woven into yours. Let the crickets hum, cradle you, the breeze, a gentle nudge toward sleep. No more mysteries tonight, just the quiet truth that you're part of this cosmic dance linked to those who cranked dials under the same sky. Close your eyes, let the stars blur, and drift into dreams where bronze and wonder still spin. Sleep well, stargazer.